Well, here we go again. Alongside of Sly 2 Band of Thieves, Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves was re-released using emulation in December of 2024, and I'm itching to finish up my umpteenth visit with the Cooper gang, so I hope you'll join me for the ride once more. Over 4 years ago, I posted a 3.5-hour look at Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves, and I came to appreciate this third title more during that playthrough. I argued that it wasn't as cohesive as Sly 2, with the gameplay being relatively scatterbrained owed to the new characters, plentiful number of vehicle sections, and gimmicks like a 3D mode. I also felt that the story wasn't as good as Band of Thieves because it was more character-driven, while I preferred the plot-driven approach of the original, but I still came to appreciate that different style. I haven't played Honor Among Thieves since making that video, but I can't help but to feel my opinion on it has changed owed to some of the comments people have made on that video, and having further time to reflect. I want to see if another playthrough confirms some of those newfound beliefs or not. Overall, I want to investigate a thought that has occurred to me recently, that Sly 3 took a different approach than Band of Thieves because it didn't want to retrace the same steps, shifting away from the plot-driven adventure to instead focus on the members of the Cooper gang themselves, and not just how they intermingle with one another, but how they grow and adapt through interactions with new characters. It can be very easy to play it safe with a sequel, doing the same thing over again, but Sucker Punch wanted to try something new with this final entry, exploring the personalities and psyches of these characters while offering up fans one last love letter before leaving the series behind. And that's the overarching thought I'm going into this playthrough with, to see if I can transform the greater appreciation I uncovered in my last playthrough into a full-blown love. Much like my recent Band of Thieves video, this is going to be more of a love letter style commentary than an in-depth analysis. I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on the game as they come to me, trying to focus on the thesis I just outlined, but I'm not going to shy away from other random tidbits as I see fit. This video isn't meant to replace my 3.5-hour version on Sly 3, but instead to explore the game once more to see what opinions have changed or stayed the same. Again, I hope it provides some entertainment for you. If it does, and you want to support me further, you can always sign up as a channel member. I recently added a new tier for only $1.99 a month, and there's also the $4.99 tier as well. You can also leave a super thanks or donate on Buy Me a Coffee. Links for all of that can be found below. And if that doesn't interest you, subscribing to the channel is always a help. As I said in my recent channel update video, when we reach 3,000 subscribers, I'm going to begin a new Sly project, ranking all the jobs and levels from all 4 games from worst to best. I'm really looking forward to making that, so I hope we can push towards that sub goal quickly. So if you want to see that video, hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much, and without further ado, let's once again dive into the world of Sly Cooper with a look at Sly 3, Honor Among Thieves. This introduction is amazing. I love how Sly takes on a Batman-like persona in this cutscene. He remains shrouded in the shadows, picking off one guard at a time before revealing himself with a patented title card before taking out another foe and prompting you to start the journey. I love how each game's introduction helps to set the tone of the adventure. Sly 1's introduction is mostly quiet, establishing the basics without a lot of spectacle. Sly 2's introduction shows the entire gang entering the museum, emphasizing that game's theme of brotherhood from the very beginning. The mission itself is stealth-oriented, epitomizing the greater approach to sneaky heist and deception found in that sequel. And then, here, we get a lot more in-your-face danger. Sly is taking on guards before you even take control, highlighting that this third title is going to dip into grandiose action more than what's come before. Of course, the other element to this tutorial is mystery. Sly 2 ends with the gang being ripped apart owed to the mental and physical scars inflicted upon them by seeing Sly's vision through to the end. This third game wants to let those feelings linger a little bit longer, rebuilding the anticipation to see how the gang comes back together. And of course, they aren't alone. Keen fans of the series may be able to identify these mysterious helpers on voice and silhouette alone, but confirmation for each of their identities won't come for hours. It's awesome and adds a little weight to the introduction the next time you play, realizing just who everyone is. It's clear that whoever these characters are, the Cooper Gang has expanded past anything we've seen before. And that's a cause for intrigue and maybe concern if you like the trio on their own. Time will tell as you play. For now though, all we can do is press on. I love the little nicknames that the characters get, small hints to their identity and relationship to the characters, especially Penelope, who is referred to as Agent Heartthrob by Bentley. Each of their contributions helps Sly push onward, outlining that teamwork will once again be important in this game. Then there's the introduction to Dr. M, and it's fantastic. Sly-tly needed a new big bad after Clockwork had finally been vanquished for good, and they delivered a spectacular one. The owl will always be more iconic, but Dr. M is the better character. I've truly come to believe that over the last few years. As I'll say many times in this video, Sly-tly is all about legacy, and Dr. M plays a foil to Sly and the gang's growth so well on that front. His introduction here is perfect in establishing himself as a villain while also granting you a peek at his psyche. He kills off a grunt because he failed in changing a password to the island's new security system. The monkey even goes so far as to bring up the dude's family, probably easing his nerves by talking about something so important to him before promptly informing him that he's about to die, giving him a moment of panic before the end. A perfect encapsulation of cruelty in less than 1 minute. At the top of the elevator, we learn that Sly is seeking access to the Cooper Vault. That's what this entire mission centers on. It goes to shit though when security detects him and Dr. M shows up. He hints at a relationship with Sly's family, which is awesome foreshadowing, while Sly continues his normal witty banter. I love this scene and the action that follows it. We've been chased in tutorials before, but the spectacle of the moment here has been dialed up. Emerging from the lab, we come face to face with a giant creature with Dr. M plugged in like an iPhone charger in the wall. So many questions emerge from this, but there's no time. Bentley needs our help, but our attacks are mute. The creature hungers, resulting in one final great moment in a tutorial full of great moments. The cane is the key to the vault. Clearly, a lot of work has gone into planning this heist, but Sly throws that all away in an instant if it means saving his friend. Let the weight of that choice sink in. It conveys that the second game's theme of brotherhood wasn't a one-off instance to be ignored here. No, that journey created a lasting love that endures between these characters. It's fantastic characterization, and I think the combination of all of these factors makes Sly-tly's tutorial the best in the series. Maybe that's me being hyperbolic after just having experienced it again, but I think it's true. What do you think? What's the best tutorial? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, this gives way to our standard introductory cutscene highlighting Sly's background, both his ancestral roots, his tormented childhood, and the relationship between himself and his friends. The events after Sly 2 are glossed over, deferring instead to a printed comic available outside of the game to bridge the gap between the events of that game and this one. I still have never read that comic, but I'd love to get my hands on it. Wait, I wonder how much it costs. $152 on eBay, my god. Yeah, I'm gonna have to pass on that. I wish they had found a better way to incorporate that information into this game, but whatever. We get the gist. Sly learns about the Cooper Vault from a former ally of his father, McSweeney, the Murray of their group. Sly aims to break into the vault to uncover its treasures and collect his inheritance, but he knows it's going to take an army of incredible thieves to get past Dr. M's forces. And with that, the premise of the game's story is established, and the only direction to go is backwards, into the past. The game will be a series of flashbacks, which I don't really think helps with the overall cohesiveness of the story, but let's not knock it too quickly. I wish I could say the adventure is ready to unfold now, but nope. First, we have to do the hazard room. Man, I hate this thing for so many reasons. It kills the pace of the story, it's an extreme low point after an incredible introduction, it can't be skipped on subsequent playthroughs, it establishes basics that very well could have been a part of the tutorial, and it's insulting to anyone who's played the previous games. Sly is not a mechanically complex game, and dumbing it down to this degree is too much. The previous games never felt the need to separate the tutorials into their own little unique space. No, they just found ways to incorporate it naturally through the story. I have no clue why Sly-tly felt the need to defer away from that, but whatever, at least it's over pretty quickly. If only the Sly Cooper completionist in me didn't force me to come back and do every tutorial as they unlock. I don't know why, I just can't help myself. And as we leave the hazard room, I'm brought to this menu, and I gotta say, I'm not a big fan of the layout of it. Sly 2's was a lot more stylized, with the van taking off and the portraits of the villains. Same goes for the job complete screens. They both look cheap and rushed, but this game did release just a year after the previous, so maybe this is the way they cut some corners. Opera of Fear has always been one of my favorite episodes in Sly 3, and that's mostly because it's the only chapter that isn't partially focused on introducing a new character into the gang. What can I say? I'm a sucker for the original trio, but again, I am going to try to be more appreciative of the new members. With that being said though, I'm going to enjoy this episode once more. It starts with getting Murray back. The events of Sly 2 left him in mental anguish after a momentary lapse in focus cost Bentley his ability to walk. Despite there being no way for Murray to predict that Clockless Jaw would crush the turtle, he still feels extremely guilty, almost like survivor's guilt. He's always been the muscle of the group, and he fails to live up to those expectations in this moment. That grief sends him spiraling and searching for answers, leading to a breakaway from the Cooper gang for a more inward investigation. This takes the form of studying under a mystic guru and living a life of peace devoid of violence. It's a clear overcorrection for Murray's guilt, abandoning the identity he built up for himself after the events of Sly 1 and cementing them throughout Sly 2. No longer violent, he instead focuses on a mission of peace, which brings him to Venice, where he's tasked with restoring nature's balance, making the black infected waters run pure once more. To get a shot at reuniting with Murray, Sly and Bentley travel to the city of canals, hoping that their travels don't bring them face to face with Don Octavio, a local mob leader and the most intimidating villain in this game after Dr. M. He's an opera singer turned Don, rooted in his past, unable to accept society's changing taste in music. He looks to restore his glory days by force through taking the city hostage using pollution. Journeying out into the hub world leads us to our first big difference, the lack of clue bottles. The only Sly game without them. I can't find any official reason for why Sucker Punch didn't include them, which leads me to theorize that it once again came down to time. I guess too much effort was spent on developing the local multiplayer mode, which certainly was not needed, even if they do provide a little bit of fun for a short while. Anyway, our first task is hunting down Murray, and infiltrating Police HQ for clues seems like the best first step. This job is great. It incorporates that classic Sly platforming, but also works in a few of the new mechanics found in this game. That includes the speech bubbles where you have to select the right option to progress. There's no penalty for choosing the wrong option either, so it ends up being extra flavor text, which I love. These characters are great, especially Dimitri, so why wouldn't I want to hear more of their quips? Carmelita's presentation gives you background about Don Octavio if you take the time to listen, and the new lockpicking mechanic feels right at home alongside of pickpocketing. Escaping on the water with Carmelita in hot pursuit is on brand for the beginning of a Sly Cooper game, and Sly even says a meme word 19 years before it was cool.
So forward. What happened to the demure girl I used to know?
Meeting back up with Murray is a treat. You see his peaceful side, but shades of his rage poke through, demonstrating that he's partially suppressing who he is in an attempt to change. Sly tries to convince him that what happened to Bentley isn't his fault by simply telling him that it wasn't his fault. But Murray isn't hearing any of that right now. His quest is important to him, and Sly does the right thing by spending time just listening to Murray's adventures and catching up. I just wish we could have been a part of that conversation, but I guess this cutscene can't drag on for 20 minutes. With that, we have our first set of jobs. To get Murray back on the team, we'll have to solve Venice's tar pollution problem, which means dealing with the mobster Octavio. Before starting these, I decided to grab up some coins. One thing I learned from my recent Sly 2 playthrough is that the power-ups can breathe new life into these games. I used to ignore these things on many playthroughs, but they do add some gameplay variation, so I decided to give them a chance once more. And to be honest, overall, I felt their impact was more worthwhile in Sly 2 than in Sly 3. Since you're constantly changing characters in this game, you don't get into the same flow state in a single job, and it feels harder to implement the power-ups in a useful way. But in the spirit of changing things up, I decided to start with Canal Chase, a mission I almost never do first. That's because it's a departure from Sly 2's formula of doing reconnaissance work first, so I usually do Octavio Snap before anything else. Canal Chase is our first of many vehicle missions in Sly 3. I really ragged on these in my 3.5-hour video, citing them as evidence of the unfocused gameplay getting too far away from the series' roots. I still agree that some of them are unnecessary, and I'll be sure to point out which ones, but my opinion has softened. One commenter on my original Sly 3 video pointed out that vehicles have always been a part of Sly's DNA, with the first game having several of its own. They were pace breakers to split up Sly's platforming. I don't think that same argument can be extrapolated onto Sly 3 though, because there's a major difference between Sly 1 and its sequels, the additional playable characters. You didn't have the opportunity to play as Bentley or Murray in Sly 1, and so the vehicles were used to inject gameplay variety. In my opinion, having Bentley and Murray here provide enough of that variety, so much of the vehicle sections could have been toned down. Unfortunately, Sly 3 chooses to include more than I would have liked, but I will say that I did enjoy them a little bit more on this playthrough because I really tried to give them a fair shake. I mean, what can I say? Canal Chase is fun, it really is, and at the very least, it supports this game's heavier emphasis on action instead of stealth. Okay, I can't put off Octavio Snap any longer than that though. It's a pretty challenging first reconnaissance job, considering it's quite easy to get caught, sometimes in hilarious fashion like this.
I got a shadow, huh? You stink! Back in my day, thieves knew how not to get caught.
In the previous game, capturing photos of Dimitri's operation was done in complete safety, but that's not the case here. Octavio can spot you from a distance, and even running close to him automatically triggers a job failed, no chance to get away. It's nothing extreme, but it's certainly going to test some new players. Huh, maybe those hazard room tutorials weren't so bad after all. No, what am I saying? They all should have been optional. One final point I want to make about this job is that I love how it continues to emphasize Carmelita. You can find her roaming the overworld, she shows up in the first job, and is mentioned in both Octavio Snap and Canal Chase, which is all good. The game ends with the serious romantic involvement between Sly and Carmelita, so building the attraction early on is good, even if it's done in light ways. My god, the Mad Lads, they actually did it. They left the 3D feature into this emulation, and it is still fully playable. That's wild. I mean, that's crazy. In my original Sly 3 video, I asked if people still had their optimizer goggles, aka the cheap pair of 3D glasses included in the box. I lost mine, and I figured many others would be the same, but surprisingly, there have been a lot of comments from people saying that they still had theirs. I'm so jealous. I'd love to see the 3D for myself to see how poorly it's aged, if that's the case. You know what? Let's check eBay for this too. Oh my god, $45? I bought the emulation for $10, and between the comics and the glasses, I'd be in for $200 just to experience Sly 3 properly. Wow. No thanks. Anyway, this is a great job as well. You get some Sly platforming, some eavesdropping on Octavio, and a decent amount of combat. This episode does a great job of giving you plenty of time to be up close and personal with the villain, and I love that. You get a better sense of his character. And I may have said this in my other video, but you really feel Murray's absence at the end of this job. If he were here to man the other door, he and Sly would clean this job up easily. Bentley wouldn't even take any damage. But without him, you have to pivot back and forth between the doors. It's not hard owing to the fire pits, but it does make you miss the muscle. Run and Bomb is a pretty standard platforming mission that once again brings you face to face with the Don. There's some classic lines here, but the thing that stood out to me most was the timer. I'm pretty sure this is the first time in the series where you're required to complete a task before time runs out. I mean, you did have to run up the giant death rate in Sly 1, but there wasn't an actual graphic like this. There was no timer, you just had to beat the lava. Sly 3 has a challenge mode, and I imagine the timer was mostly designed for that, but it managed to sneak its way into the main story a few times. A neat detail that I realized for the first time on this run. Next up, we have two missions that introduce us to characters that we haven't played yet in this game, Murray and Carmelita. Murray's mission is pretty basic, but it's nice to give him something to do in the first episode, even if he isn't back on the team yet. The ball move proves to be a nice expansion for his gameplay too, something that goes beyond just fighting and throwing. It's like platforming of his own. And I just love this line.
Come on, what happened to the Murray? The guy who'd get into a fist fight with 10 thugs wearing nothing but a towel. The guy who used to punch first and not bother asking questions later. Where's that guy? Where's my old friend?
I'm sorry, Bentley. I tried to save you, but I just wasn't strong enough.
You can imagine this is the first time Murray has seen Bentley in a long time, and Murray begins blurting out an apology, going so far as to put himself down. It's short, but it tells you everything you need to know about the guilt he continues to feel. Carmelita, meanwhile, is a new beast, the first of 5 new playable characters in the game, alongside of the Guru, Panda King, Dimitri, and I guess Penelope if you count this moment. Inspector Fox's mission is a third-person shooter section with a very generous targeting reticle. She gets a mega jump that allows her to get around the map quickly in a way unique to her character, and I appreciate that. It would be pretty jarring if she controlled just like Sly, Bentley, or Murray, so instead she gets her own method. She's fun to play as, and it provides more moments of action, which again seems like the developer's intent with this third game. So in that regard, she fits right in, despite being a departure from the traditional stealth platforming. Guard duty must be one of the most iconic missions in the entire franchise. It's certainly the funniest. The Italian accent itself is killer, and something about the guard's obsession with pasta sauce and Sly getting distracted by it is hilarious. Sly is always calm, cool, and collected in the field, but even he is susceptible to one of man's greatest weaknesses. His stomach. Not to mention Tony the Killer Bee. I always enjoyed these exchanges, it's really hard not to. At the same time, the disguise system is such a natural fit for these games. What better way to blend in as a thief than by donning a costume? It's devious and promotes stealthy play. It's great. I wish the passwords got longer as you progress though, capping at maybe 6 inputs. It's an easy way to push this system beyond this initial intro, but the game never does that. It's always a 4-input password. Still, the inclusion is worthwhile and on brand. With that, we're ready for our first operation of the game, Operation Tarbygone. As is the case with Sly 2, the final missions of each chapter do a great job of testing the skills you learn throughout the episode. Double button switches, guard disguises, and canal combat are all sprinkled in amongst the usual combat. It's fun. And you know, in my original Sly 3 video, I took a lot of flack for being too harsh on Bentley singing, and you know, I gotta say, I really did miss the point. It is bad on purpose, and it makes me laugh out loud during this playthrough. When he hits you with the basic law, with no real attempt at singing, it's hysterical. He's just like, law. Like, it's fantastic. But the best part about this mission has to be how it inspires Murray to return to the team. The developers did an amazing job of set dressing here, putting Bentley back in the same sort of compromised situation he faced at the end of Band of Thieves. He's already taken a shot and will be hurt more if no one steps in to intervene. It's a great character moment for Murray. He doesn't waffle on what to do once he hears his friend call for help. He leaps into action and starts beating ass, and it's great. The dialogue is just epic. Murray really knows how to hype himself up. It's also mechanically satisfying because Octavio is the hardest boss fight in the series up until this point, at least the ones that feature traditional combat. He has some strong moves, but only kicks it up a few notches in the second arena where his singing can catch you off guard. In the end, Murray prevails, fully committing back to his old self. I guess the call to action and witnessing all the destruction got to him, realizing that he's always had the strength to protect his friends. It wasn't his fault that he was caught off guard. It could have happened to anyone. But standing by idly, knowing that his friends would get hurt, he simply can't allow that to happen. Shows you everything you need to know about the Murray's heart. With one guilt rectified, another takes its place. Murray feels uneasy about abandoning his path to enlightenment and leaving the guru in the dark. Once again showing how tight-knit this group has become, the gang ventures to Australia so that Murray can reconnect with the guru. This is the first time, and I believe the only time in the franchise's history, that the gang travels to a location at the behest of a member other than Sly. Think about it, all the places you go in 1, 2, and 4 are because of the titular character, going after the Fiendish Five, recovering the clockwork parts, and saving the ancestors. Hell, most of the episodes in this game are about recruiting a companion for the Cooper Vault job. That remains true in Rumble Down Under. Sly does seek to recruit the guru, but the main point of this introduction is that he's going to support Murray. That's the driving force, wanting to be there for his friend. Rarely is there a purpose that supersedes Sly's motivations, but we do get one here. He's going there because Murray is like his brother. He has to be there for him, and I think that's a good thing to include. It reinforces the theme of Sly 2 while giving this moment later in the game more weight. Bentley is questioning their role as sidekicks in the gang, but perhaps Sly's willingness to help him reconnect with the guru is what propels Murray's argument, grounding Bentley's fractured mindset. Food for thought, maybe. Search for the Guru is a fine introductory mission. It sees you visiting the outskirts of the map, hitting up the Guru's possible locations, but most importantly, giving Murray some screen time. It's rare to see Sly and Murray being the two Banaki-Com chatters. Usually Bentley is in there somewhere, but I like this mix. This one gives Murray some time to shine, something he didn't get much of in episode 1, outside of the ending. And it also gives us a chance to learn about his relationship with the Guru. Besides that, standard Sly platforming, and there's nothing wrong with that. The Guru himself is fine, but I still wish he spoke English like every other character. I'm not sure what the gibberish accomplishes outside of characterizing the Guru as being uncivilized. Spelunking is the first mission I decided to tackle. I love that Bentley gives Murray a bit of a pep talk at the beginning, easing his nerve about facing the Guru and the guilt he feels. Then you get into the caves, and I just love the atmosphere of these. The darkness looms around you with only rickety bridges and small rockways in sight. It's one of the best interior locations in the series if you ask me. If you didn't complete Murray's Hazard Room section, this mission gives you a great tutorial on his main moves, throwing and fighting, while also providing the ball form more utility. There's something so satisfying about getting these three pistons to align, but my favorite thing has to be throwing flashlight guards at the rocks. They always seem to bounce right back at you, giving you another chance to toy with them. I love the power rush of it. It makes Murray feel so different to play as compared to Sly and Bentley. We also get our introduction to the Mask of Dark Earth, which, yep, it's still a terrible antagonist. No character, no development, no motivation. And unlike the wolf in Lemon Rage, this kangaroo doesn't even get any new attack animations. The only difference is that it's bigger. So, I don't get it. I hate the Mask of Dark Earth. But finally, we reach the Guru, and I do like this interaction. Despite not knowing what he's saying, it's clear his words bring comfort to Murray, while also giving him a new task, to help eliminate the miners. Okay, maybe, just maybe, I'm starting to come around on the vehicle missions of Sly 3. If you're gonna include a vehicle section, it ought to fit into the action-heavy theme of the gameplay, like Canal Chase, or it ought to find ways to incorporate standard gameplay from the rest of the series. Big Truck takes that latter approach. It breaks up the truck gameplay with some slide platforming, and even though it's relatively simple and quick, it's still a nice divide. Controlling the truck is also balanced well. You have to capture scorpions, but you can't let your tires overheat. During the first part of the mission, you have a pool of water that acts as a safety spot, a constant reprieve if your tires get dangerously close to failure. The player can use this time to get familiar with the controls before that safety net is removed. Now only scorpions cool your tires. It introduces a little extra chaos, but not too much owed to the great number of blue scorpions that spawn in. Challenge is elevated without dipping into the extreme. Back to Sly for Dark Caves. It's another good old-fashioned Sly platforming level with a flair of combat. While in the caves, I pickpocketed a few guards, and the instant loot reward has been nice this time around. You don't get the same thrill of selling off every item in a few seconds like in Sly 2, but instead, you feel like you always have plenty of coins, which is nice. I'm just surprised they didn't give the guards crystals and diamonds as loot. Would have made a lot more sense than what we find here. And the second cave could have used a little bit more platforming at the beginning, if you ask me, but you do get some later during the Death Gauntlet. I swear, I die at least once in this route every time I play the game. The key is patience. If you wait just a few seconds, you can easily dodge the dingo's whips, but if you rush, he's gonna hit you, do damage, and probably knock you off. The timer makes you want to rush, but if you want to avoid damage, that's how you have to do it. Heading to our next job as Bentley got me thinking, is he the only playable video game character to ever be in a wheelchair? Like, for more than just a few moments. I can't think of any others. That's kind of cool on its own, right? But they arguably made him even smoother to control and therefore more enjoyable because of the wheelchair. I don't know how to describe it, but he just feels more fluid as he moves, and that's awesome. Anyway, Unleash the Guru gets us playing as the titular character for the first time, and it's fine. I love that he uses a spiritual vision instead of a binoculacom. It's a great detail that informs the character. He's no modern day person, he's an aborigine. And his gameplay is decent too. Being able to take control of guards and play as them is a fun twist. Using their attacks against other foes can be a moment of player-driven fun. And transforming into objects to get away is slick, offering up something new besides fight or flight. Instead, you hide. Before tackling the next set of jobs, I decided to go coin hunting for more power-ups. Unlike Sly 2, you unlock new ones between job sets in Sly 3. And I made a crazy discovery. I never knew that you could get Bentley's hover pack and Sly's paraglider in Episode 2. Both are required in Episode 3, and I figured that's when they became available, but no. You can get them in Episode 2. It's a small thing, but it really blew my mind. I decided to do the claw next to get it out of the way. When I think of the bad vehicle sections of Sly 3, this one isn't quite the one I dread most, but it's easily second. The exchange between Sly and Murray is funny, but the gameplay is just a drag. It's not core Sly gameplay, you know, platforming, stealth, and combat, but on top of that, it isn't a heart-pounding action set piece either. The music is dull, the guards come in slowly, making them easy to dispatch, and the challenge never kicks up enough. It's an exercise in patience, just get it over with as fast as possible. Hungry Croc is much better, probably one of the best Murray missions across the series. What struck me most though was taking in a few moments to soak in the binoculacom conversation. Sly 3 examines his characters more than Sly 2 ever did, with bigger character arcs, like Sly giving up stealing for love, Bentley getting over his insecurities, and Murray finding peace with his guilt. It's all good stuff, but those are the big moments. I think these interactions between the trio are a lot more characterized here in the sequel. They've always had banter, but more personality is interjected into these binoculacom conversations in Sly 3. I mean, listen how Bentley speaks here.
We need to put the smack down on these bad dudes for justice.
Righteous! I'm the man for the job!
I can't recall him ever getting this animated in Sly 2. It gives insight to his relationship with Murray. The game is masterful at using these brief interactions to endear you to the characters, and it's probably done best in Sly 3. Speaking of saving the best for last, we have Lemon Rage, arguably the greatest mission in the entire series, which is surprising considering it doesn't really rely on any core platforming mechanics at all. Instead, it's all about the character dynamics, and seeing all three Cooper Gang members work in the field in unison. I think the popularity of this mission speaks a lot to what fans enjoy most about this franchise, the characters. And that's not a dig at the gameplay, it's great too, but the reason I love these games is because of Sly, Bentley, and Murray, and how they interact. And the lemonade chug and bar brawl they get into here does a great job of capturing their spirits as individuals and their dynamics as a gang. Murray hammers his drink while Bentley sips it, and the amount of time you spend fighting as each character reflects their combat proficiency. And when the big gun gets sent in, they all work together. It's really great stuff. If only Operation Moon Crash was as good. I don't think it's bad, it's just missing something. Without a proper villain to spearhead this episode's conclusion, it comes off as weak. They did the best they could by bringing Carmelita into the mix and having the mask corrupt her, but without a fight or more back and forth dialogue, it doesn't live up to the heights of other operations. That being said, I do love this exchange between cop and robber.
Cooper, thought I'd find you here.
Carmelita, you've got a little something on your face.
It's not nice to make fun of a girl's looks. Maybe I should
Smash you!
Now, that's not nice.
And the gameplay sequences aren't bad either, they're just a little short, and the claw section, well, I don't need that ever. You know what I would have liked though, is if Bentley somehow ended up fighting the Mask of Dark Earth. I don't know how it would have played out mechanically, but he's always been the one to acknowledge and handle paranormal entities in the past, and I think a fight between the two could have been great. Like, after Sly pries it off Carmelita, he and Murray carry her to safety, while Bentley stays back and finishes the job. Considering he doesn't get a proper boss fight in this game, I think that would have been a great inclusion. But with the defeat of the mask, the Cooper Gang grows by one. As monumental as this seems, it does sort of feel like the Guru is tagging along. Since we can't understand what he says, it's hard to get a grasp of his personality, so to me it feels like he's just kind of there. Maybe this was smart though, as you get 3 episodes now that feature pretty much only the personalities of the original cast before that gets built on further. Maybe that's why I like the first half of this game more than the second half. With Murray's guilt resolved, the focus shifts to recruiting more team members for the Cooper Vault job. Needing an RC specialist, Bentley devises a plan to recruit a woman named Penelope to aid in their endeavors, but she only agrees to join if we can defeat her boss, the Black Baron. I think that this is an awesome framing tool for the episode because it seems so out of left field. Like, how are they going to incorporate the standard gameplay sequences into a chapter about aerial combat? It creates intrigue going in, and then they absolutely smash it. I don't think there's one bad job in this entire episode. It starts with Hidden Flight roster, which carries double duty here. On one hand, it introduces us to the competition and the Black Baron himself. He manages to come off as intimidating, as far as Sly villains go anyway, despite his short stature. We're also informed about how the competition will work, as well as some background on it, mainly that it's been full of cheaters in the past and that the Baron will not tolerate that behavior. It helps justifies why the guards attack you on sight in the overworld, while also giving the player the information they need. And if you listen to the dialogue later, you'll learn that the Baron himself is a fraud, fully encouraging his staff to do whatever is necessary to ensure that he wins the competition. He makes threats against the life of the other pilots for cheating, but is also willing to do it himself. It gives you plenty of motivation to go after him in the Robin Hood-esque way that the gang has always utilized. But like I said, it's pulling double duty. This mission is also a nostalgic blast from the past with so many references to the previous 2 games. The big ones are of course the cameos, Dimitri and Mugshot, who both play prominent roles in this episode, one as a commentator and the other as an adversary. It's fun to see how old faces are blended into this new experience. Sucker Punch knew this would be their last Sly game, and these smart inclusions are a good way of honoring the series without drowning it in past accomplishments. At the same time, there's a few other little Easter eggs, like the Paris Warthog's head being up on the wall, or how the paintings are locations found in Sly 2. A lot of Sly Cooper love went into this opening mission. Oh, and one last thing, the hotel lobby is the only time in the franchise where you get to wander around a safe enclosure full of non-hostile NPCs, and I think that's pretty cool. Extra time had to go into making these character models, programming their simple behaviors, and building out this level, and I think they did a great job. I'm sure it doesn't get a lot of love, but it's so different from any other location in the series that I felt like praising their efforts. Cooper Hangar Defense is one of the game's most challenging missions. You have a combat-heavy section as Murray, a defensive game of traps reminiscent of Mojo Trap Action, and our first RC vehicle segment of the game. It can be easy to get overwhelmed in all three sections if you aren't careful. I like a little challenge, and this mission certainly delivers some. Honestly though, I did this one first to get it out of the way because I think the next two jobs are absolutely brilliant. This one's good, but they don't compare to what comes next. When done in tandem, Frame Team Iceland and Frame Team Belgium feel like mini operations of their own, drawing on the skill sets of all four Cooper gang members. Sly has to use his stealth skills to rob a few key items, the Guru has to take control of guards, Murray gets a new vehicle section, which isn't awful, and Bentley, well, he gets to pickpocket. He has gotten the short end of the stick gameplay-wise up until this point, but at least we get some great character moments throughout. Murray's lines always crack me up during the Iceland job, and the meticulousness of Bentley's plans never cease to amaze me. He really has thought of everything. The best jobs in the series get all the characters working together as one, allowing there to be more interactions besides the virtual ones that double as explanations. These style of missions are a lot of fun because they feel so core to the Sly experience, pulling off tough jobs through smart planning and the use of every member's talents. I don't know guys, maybe I do like the vehicle sections. I mean, I've never had a problem with the planes before. They've always been my favorite alternate gameplay style in Sly 3, but I've even been enjoying the vehicle sections before this one. Well, the Claw is a tedious drag, but at least it's over fast. And the rest have been good. The boat here, the boat in Venice, and of course now these planes. They go a long way in supporting the more action-oriented gameplay. What can I say? The plane dogfights are fun. It's easy to control, there's a lot going on, and tracking down a victim for destruction before blowing them to smithereens is satisfying. I guess I should remain a little hesitant because I know there's a vehicle section that's looming that I can't stand, but you know, so far, I've enjoyed most of the vehicle sections. Giant Wolf Massacre is another banger. What an extreme tonal shift within one job. You start in this super vulnerable position, having to stalk a massive wolf and land dart shots from extremely close range. Maybe I'm tripping, but it seems like you have to be even closer here in this original than in the remaster on PlayStation 3. But I'm sure I'm just imagining that. Anyway, the danger is palpable. Like, it's so easy to manipulate guard behavior after years and years of playing these games, but this beast always feels deadly and unpredictable. But when you manage to land all those shots, what does the game do? Well, it pivots to the other extreme. You go into action movie mode with a total wipe down of every guard in the neighborhood. The wolf is so much fun to control as you wreak havoc on all the guards who you're usually fleeing from. It's an outstanding job with a fantastic implementation of tonal shift. I've really been gushing over the jobs in Flight of Fancy, but for good reason. I think a lot of it comes down to how many of the jobs incorporate more than one character. Look, I love Band of Thieves, but so many of its jobs feature just a single character, instead of cooperation. That teamwork was instead reserved for the operations. but I get it. Sly 2 had to build Murray and Bentley's gameplay from the ground up, but it would have been a lot to continuously layer their missions with team-ups on top of that development that already had to happen. But Sly 3 already had that groundwork set, allowing the team to create jobs that utilize multiple characters, which opens up more avenues for character interactions, and thus a partial reason for the greater emphasis on them throughout this story. You could argue that Sly 3 also introduces new characters, but their playstyles aren't used as frequently, and they were still able to lean on the hub world / mission structure developed in Sly 2. The point I'm trying to make here is that they found more ways to create jobs that incorporate multiple characters, and I think that's a real strength of Sly 3 over Sly 2. And what better example than Beauty and the Beast? It's another great mission, combining the new dialogue mechanics with some Sly gameplay and culminating in a showdown between Carmelita and Mugshot. And it's just a lot of fun. I always love leading him around town like a puppet before finishing him off. Next up is the return of Bentley's hacking, and I gotta say, it feels so much better here in Sly 3 than in Sly 2. The flow of it is a lot more natural, and I think a big reason for that is that these ball barriers now break as you hit them, allowing you to progress more fluidly. You don't have to double back around as much. The better flow does make these big brutish enemies a lot easier to handle though, making me think that the second hack of the 4 here is actually the hardest. Instead of having a boss entity at the end, they just load up on constant shooters who aim like Steph Curry. It makes it a lot tougher if you ask me. But with that, we're ready for our operation. The gameplay is fun, once again tying in the mechanics we learned throughout the mission. Murray's rowing and plane combat, while also bringing back the paraglider as a requirement. And of course, the fight between Sly and the Black Baron is entertaining, albeit a little repetitive with the guard spam. The plot twist still gives me whiplash though. Sweet Penelope has a dark side, I guess. One who is willing to command her guards to beat the competition to within an inch of their life simply for going outside. Cigarette breaks are lethal around here because of her. Anyway, once again, action is the focus of the gameplay, but I'm more interested in the character beats. This is where Bentley's character arc truly begins. There's been hints that he has a crush on Penelope and is starting to admire her, but the jealousy he shows in the cutscene is what triggers some inferiority within him. When Penelope crushes on Sly, it makes him feel like he isn't good enough to win her affection, and it's quite the change of tone for the turtle. Throughout the first half of the game, he's been nothing shy of brave and ingenious, showing that his confidence arc in Sly 2 wasn't forgotten here. He crafts up plans that turn other factions against each other to serve the Cooper gang's purpose. He has no qualms about challenging an obvious superior physical opponent to a fight, not knowing what will happen to him if Mugshot loses his temper early. Hell, make it 2, he stands up to Octavio too. And he mends his relationship with Murray so effortlessly. It's all good stuff, but now we see his weakness. Inferiority, feeling lesser than Sly and Murray in his physical capabilities. Perhaps the fact that you don't play as Bentley much in the opening 3 chapters is to subtly hint at that. Murray and Sly do the field work, while Bentley mostly hangs back. Food for thought. For now, he feels like Penelope can't see past his limitations, and it feels him leaving sorry for himself, perhaps wishing that he was able to pull off the same moves as Sly. Anyway, I'll touch on the turtle more as we go. Murray's arc for the game is all but wrapped up by this point, so it makes for a good time to shift gears to Bentley before saving Sly's growth for the final chapter. And as we leave episode 3, may I just say, it's my favorite in Honor Among Thieves. I have a love-hate relationship with episode 4, as I find many of the missions to be really polarizing. Either I love them, or I don't. From a character development perspective though, it's another great episode. Bentley's jealousy is given time to breathe, especially here in the first job, when he sends off Sly as quickly as possible when Penelope starts to flirt with him. You can feel his pain too, as she analyzes the situation and basically reads his mind. She's a genius like him, finally someone he can interact with on the same intellectual level, and of course she's in love with the field guy. While that dynamic isn't a large focus in this chapter, it's certainly given a chance to fester here. Instead, this chapter will focus mostly on Sly while tying into the game's overall theme. Sly-tly is a game about legacy, as many characters are forced to either confront the past or insecurities within themselves and either grow from it or remain stagnant. I've gone over this in my other Sly-tly video, so I won't harp on it here, but what I will say is that the developers were smart to bring back a villain from Thievius Raccoonus and explore the relationship between them and Sly. These are characters that were responsible for the death of Sly's parents, an event that turned his life upside down, but also set him on the path of meeting Bentley and Murray. They became his family, and it's faith and trust in Bentley that ultimately gets Sly to consider working with the Panda King. I think it's smart that Sly remains mostly distrustful of the guy throughout the game, and that the development team didn't play it off as the two completely reconciling the past. I mean, it's hard to reconcile with your parents' murderer. Instead, they enter into a contract of sorts, Sly agreeing to help save his daughter in exchange for his help in accessing the Cooper Vault. As the episode title suggests, it's a cold alliance, a temporary truce. And at the same time, it's clear that the Panda King has gone through a lot too, fixated on the moment of his greatest defeat when we enter his mind. Despite trying to change for the better, living the life of a monk, he's still unable to fully move on from this moment. His psyche is torn, how his daughter is kidnapped, and he can't bring himself to focus on rescuing her on his own. And smartly, they touch more on this fracturing later as the episode goes on. And can I just say, what an awesome callback this moment is, giving series fans a chance to revisit an iconic fight and a moment from the first game without tying it only to nostalgia. It's not here as a nod to the first game or a wink to the fans. No, it's relevant to this story's overall theme as well as the character growth. It's amazing. If you couldn't tell, this is one of the jobs I love. This next job always gives me bad flashbacks. It's great that Murray gets his van back. Anyone who sat through this heart-wrenching moment will feel the same. And the exchange between him and the Panda King always gets a chuckle out of me. I love that he compares Murray's van to his lost daughter. Like, what an odd comparison. And the line about getting shotgun for a month as a great honor always makes me laugh. I love these light-hearted character moments, but I'm just not a huge fan of the gameplay here. The RC yank sections never do much for me. You're either waiting for enemies to spawn in, or you're just inputting the same button prompts over and over again. At least the first time it took a few extra tugs to send them airborne. Here, it's just easier. And the turret section, I just dread it. It's not bad now that I know that you can zoom in, but when I was a kid, it caused so many annoying restarts. Yeah, I'm really glad that didn't continue into adulthood. Totally not. For real. After meeting General Sao and seeing his total arrogance up close and personal, it's time for Grapple Cam Break-In. This is another job where the comment section of the previous video has changed my mind. In that video, I said that Bentley and Murray being able to pickpocket takes away from Sly's uniqueness, but I don't feel that way anymore. Someone pointed out how effortless it remains for Sly to pickpocket while it's jankier for the other two. Bentley is slow, and Murray has to completely blow his cover. Each of their methods reflects their strengths while still ensuring that Sly remains the pickpocket king. It's a great point, and I'm inclined to agree. When trying to get all the power-ups, it makes it nice that you can still loot guards even if you aren't playing as Sly. Anyway, the job itself is pretty fun too. Bentley acts a little cold towards Sly when they exchange keys. It's not much, but it may be a subtle reflection of the insecurity he's feeling. He denies Sly the opportunity to help him, saying only his technology can get the job done. Again, subtly building the character arc for those paying attention. And it concludes with hacking, and that's never a bad choice. Laptop retrieval offers up another chance at that. In fact, it's the last time we'll be hacking in Sly-tly. The refinements make it so much smoother that it's a shame you only do it 6 times. Anyway, the real highlight here is Sly's segment. All 3 of them, actually. The walk across the heavens is sick, reminiscent of chasing after Clockla at the end of Sly 2. And the fight with Sao is amazing. You can tell they put a lot into this fight. The arena is striking and beautiful, unlike anything we've seen before. And it's also a 2-parter, fighting up above the bamboo thicket and then in the midst of it. Sal throws a lot of tricks at the player too. He's got his standard attacks, but also a defensive maneuver with a follow-up attack, grave hands that chase you, and dragons that pursue you even as you escape up the bamboo. I was going for the trophy, so I stayed on top of him to finish up the fight without taking damage, but if you give him room to breathe, those attacks will catch you off guard. The mission also does a fantastic job of showing the evil side of Sal. His arrogance was shown off in the photography job, but here's where you learn how despicable he really is. Sly calls him out, stating directly that Jin King doesn't want to marry him, and he scoffs at the idea, saying that women have no clue what they want. Nah buddy, they do, it's just not you. I think it's a great mission, and it really helps solidify Sly and the gang as heroes despite them being criminals. The Robin Hood inspiration shines through once again here. The next batch of jobs has 2 duds and a stud if you ask me. Saving Murray using the RC car has always been a take it or leave it mission for me. I think it's good that they let you practice with the car during the first job of the episode, otherwise this race might feel like it's coming out of nowhere and might be a little tough if you're playing, back in the day when you were a kid. And recharging the battery as Carmelita is okay too. It's a novel concept as you're usually the one running away from her, but this time you're the one in hot pursuit. The problem is, after playing this game dozens of times, that novelty has worn off. It doesn't help that it's super easy to cheese Sly's getaway by simply paragliding a great distance. The stud job, of course, is Vampiric Demise, a wonderful mission that introduces the Panda King style of gameplay. Naturally, he uses fireworks as his main line of defense. They have a ton of power, but it's balanced by the fact that he moves very slowly, even slower when loading fireworks, and he can barely even make it up onto rooftops. In fact, most he can't. As a result, you have to be mindful of the space between you and the opponents when you're playing as him, especially the vampires that explode upon death. It's a good balance. What I love most about this mission though is how it ties into the game's overall theme. Once again, legacy. Panda King is a character steeped in it, a once vicious overlord who lost all his power when Sly defeated him. He's had years to ruminate on that loss, fracturing his mind, and it's only been made worse by the loss of Jin King. Abandoning that past life of crime hasn't even been enough to ease his troubled mind. The hatred that fueled his rise to the top now fuels his self-loathing. He struggles to move on from that past self, as part of him believes that that old strength is needed to reclaim Jin King's life, but it also means confronting a time in his life in which he was an awful person. The dialogue between his two sides is poignant about capturing that conflict, but eventually he makes peace with himself. He puts aside his past, foregoing the legacy of villainy to instead focus on saving his daughter and becoming the father figure she needs. His old strength now has a new purpose as he leaves the hut, an attempt to redefine his legacy. It's great character work in a very short period of time. And again, I love that he and Sly don't immediately become friends. I just wish the game did a better job of tying Sal into the overall theme as well. He makes a comment about his bloodline being superior to Sly's in the finale, and that's an interesting notion, but it's just a passing remark. It's not established during the earlier confrontation, and it doesn't go anywhere here either. It's clear that Sal does heavily admire his lineage, and he believes it makes him better than others, but it's just not touched on enough to feel a greater connection to the legacy theme. At the same time, this has got to be one of my least favorite final missions across the many episodes in this series. It doesn't strike the right balance for me between the core gameplay mechanics and the spin-off additions. Instead, it relies mostly on those spin-offs. RC Car, Grapple Cam, and the dreaded pots, better not let them tip over, the bane of my existence as a kid. And the dragon fight is just alright, I'm not a big fan of it either. There is a sense of scale, stakes, and destruction that we don't normally see in the operations, but for me, the gameplay elements take away from that. Again, I'm left wishing for a different final boss fight, like Panda King vs. Sal, and perhaps Sly joins in to help, cementing the new trust between the two unlikely allies. As it is now, it's take it or leave it for me, a final drop on a pretty up and down episode. Dead Men Tell No Tales is the most controversial episode of the original trilogy, if you ask me. I think the storytelling is great, and most of the missions are fun, but I still can't help but to feel that the sailing segments absolutely derail the pacing. I'm going to go into it this time with as open a mind as I can. After all, to get the Platinum Trophy, I'm going to have to engage with it a lot. But before we get to that, we first have the setup. Dimitri calls in his favor, asking us to recover his grandfather's scuba gear that was stolen by pirates. It seems like a win-win since the gang will get an underwater specialist in the process, completing their roster for the Cooper Vault job. I love that Black Spot Pete is shown in his prime during this cutscene. He looks pretty tough, a hell of a pirate no doubt. You know, they normally introduce the main villain of the episode at some point in the introduction, but they put Lafouille on the back burner for now to instead show off the elder pirate. It's great then when you meet Black Spot only to realize he's an old man now. We are talking about Dimitri's grandfather's gear after all. I always love that little twist, not to mention that it also plays into the legacy theme. Dimitri wants to honor his grandfather by recovering what was stolen from him. And Black Spot Pete talks about his glory days when he's tricked into thinking a disguised Sly is his old shipmate Cantankerous Tim. It's all good stuff. I also ran into a weird glitch during this playthrough that I haven't seen before. Twitchy Ned spawned on the deck of the ship instead of at the top, and it gave me some time to fight him, but he can't be beaten through normal means. As I climbed to the top of the tower, the game corrected this mistake. It was nothing crazy, but I found it interesting, so I put it in my video. Also, as a quick note, I love the pirate music that plays during this chapter. The music in Sly-tly is pretty good, with so many inspired tracks relating to the episode's location. Probably my second favorite behind Sly 2. Jolly Boat Destruction is another good vehicle level, and it begs the question, why do I like this one more than the bigger pirate ship? Well, mostly you don't have to play it forever, but here it comes down to the agility. You're able to zip around the water a lot easier, and it's super satisfying to dodge cannonballs and then dish out the pain. I particularly love the section where you chase down the 6 mini-boats, ram them, and then sink them shortly after. There's something so satisfying about building up the speed and using that force to send them to the bottom of the sea. Next up is arguably the best constructed job in Sly 3. The gameplay is fun, combining many elements including the RC car, basic platforming, combat, and the grapple cam. Vehicles and gadgets being combined with the standard gameplay to create a fun set of objectives within a single mission. But it does so much more than that. It provides appropriate framing for the mission's intended narrative purpose. Now that Bentley's jealousy has been established, alongside of Penelope's crush on Sly, the goal of this job is to start developing the relationship between Bentley and Penelope, shifting the dynamic to what it will become. And it's done subtly, no proclamations of love or mutual interest. You can just tell by how they sow the seeds. First of all, even before starting this mission, it's awesome that the only other job available sees Murray and Sly working together. I like to think that outside of gameplay limitations, the gang is all out in the field at once, these jobs happening simultaneously as much as they can. So while those two are out on the boat, Bentley and Penelope are completing this job. It removes the muscle and field man from the equation, allowing the dynamic between Bentley and Penelope to develop without interference. Then there's the job itself. It begins with Bentley acknowledging that he has feelings for Penelope while also recapturing his downtrodden belief that the girls always go after Sly instead of him. This then comes to a boil when Penelope says that Sly's taught Bentley a lot after the turtle deduces that Lafouille must have a back entrance to his keep. It's this mischaracterization that really digs at Bentley. He's reached that conclusion through his own experiences, not because Sly sat him down for a lecture. He pivots to highlighting his own role on the team, standing up for himself, saying that he's the brains of the operation, the thinker. But he once again lets the insecurity slide by throwing Sly under the rug a little bit. He's just the field man after all. Penelope recognizes this insecurity, but kind soul that she is, gives Bentley a moment to be vulnerable as he reflects on his own quality of life in the wheelchair. He both stands up for himself and lets his guard down, and sometimes this is enough to get people to see you in a different way. But it's Bentley's gameplay segments that take things further. He shows that he's adept in the field. He doesn't have the agility and finesse of Sly, but he's still able to make it over these boxes no problem. And then he leans back on his strengths, using his technology to create a way up to the top of the keep. And then, going even a step further, he shows bravery by taking on a rooftop of 5 guards. One of, if not the only time in the series, that Bentley is given such a dramatic combat challenge. I, of course, used a power-up to enhance the moment a bit. It's Bentley once again using his strengths to overcome the problem in front of him. And then, to wrap up the whole ordeal, Bentley saves Penelope after she is blinded. It's a damsel in distress trope that plays out throughout this episode, but saving someone's life and restoring their sense of safety is a good and natural way to develop feelings, at least if it's not forced or staged, and that's the case here. Overall, they did a masterful job of framing this mission, giving it narrative weight, building up the story they wanted to tell, while also using the gameplay mechanics to supplement that. I love it. But I don't love what's next. Sailing. Look, I'm going to go into this trying my best to enjoy it, so let's see how it goes. It doesn't start off bad, as it's a quick trip over to Dagger Isle, a super unique location. It's just fun to mess around on the island. As I pointed out in my last video, you can use the pirate disguise on the lizards and they actually interact with you and ask for a password, and it's hilarious.
Avast! Out with the skeleton password!
Here's the password, Sly.
Jib port spar hole.
New blood, eh?
It's just great hearing them talk like guards. It makes me bust up laughing every time. The treasure map mechanic is also not bad, especially when you go back to complete it on the other episodes. This one is mandatory, so I have it ingrained in my mind at this point, but the other ones in the challenge mode do make you study a little bit. The job also ends with our next plot twist, Lafouille capturing Penelope, with Bentley being the one to step up and reassure her that she will be saved. I think I said this before too, but I love that Sly's comment comes off as abandonment to a degree, while Bentley is reassuring. To me, this is the moment in which Penelope's mind begins to change. And with that, we have true sailing to do. Deep Sea Danger is our introduction to playing as Dimitri. Using the action buttons to move takes a bit of getting used to, but once you get it, it's pretty intuitive and lets you build up some speed as you dart around. Movement ends up in an enjoyable place, but shooting your harpoon gun really doesn't. It feels like this thing has no power or weight behind it, and while it gets the job done, it just is never satisfying to use. Of course, it's only used for 2 levels, so I'm sure they didn't want to devote extra time to polishing it up completely on such a short development turnaround. It's fine for what it is, a pretty take it or leave it job for me. Same goes with taking out the Red Sea Dog clan, although I think I actively dislike this one. It's focused on the ship controls, which are fine. You know, the ship itself is easy enough to control, but I think my problem is the combat. Getting sucked into fights that you don't want to be a part of, waiting around for your cannons to cool down, and taking damage that's hard to heal up from. And I think those issues are at the core of my frustration. In particular, the healing sucks. You can only recover health by nabbing up specifically marked treasure chests in the overworld. There's no way to guarantee they spawn, and if you get sucked into a fight before getting enough of them, you may just die outright. It slows the pacing down, and I think that's a bigger problem here in Sly-tly than the previous 2 games because this one is much more action-focused. Sailing around and getting into boat fights feels like part of that theme, but the execution of it isn't quite right. It just leaves you feeling burnt out after a while. Not in this job specifically, but through the ship segment as a whole. I'm not looking forward to the grind for the Dread Pirate Trophy, that's all I can say. I'm really trying to find the fun, but much like Murray's tank section in Band of Thieves, I just don't think it's for me. Perhaps another reason I don't like the sailing section is that none of the jobs incorporate standard Sly platforming and combat. At least Crusher of the Depths brings the action focus right back to the forefront with a great spectacle mission that always feels fun to engage with. And it gets Sly and the Panda King working together again, cementing more trust between the two. And I'll say, earning the trophy by not taking any damage seems tough on paper, but the game's handy rewind system makes it, and other challenges, a breeze. Look, we've all played these games tons of times before, giving us the chance to instantly correct mistakes now, it doesn't hurt if you ask me. I used it a lot on these revisits, and I absolutely adore the feature. With that, we reach Operation Reverse Double Cross, Bentley's magnum opus of scheming. The whole thing is a matter of reverse psychology, setting up LaFouille to think he's outsmarted them, only to have calculated his every move. It's a fine job overall, but it's never been outstanding to me. Rowing the boat towards the harbor doesn't have any real obstacles, playing as Crusher is cool, but it's super easy as well, and the fight against LaFouille himself is underwhelming. The first 2 rounds are super easy since he only sticks to one move, and even round 3 isn't tough once you know what you're doing. The whole operation lacks any sort of challenge, which brings it down in my mind. Oh, and plenty of people pointed out on my Sly-tly video that I was wrong to criticize Penelope's sword fighting abilities, as she spent years training in all sorts of combat tactics while parading around as the Black Baron. Taking off the costume doesn't remove those skills, and you know, that makes sense to me, so I was wrong on that one. Anyway, this is the finale of Bentley's character arc. He overcomes his jealousy of Sly, finds someone to confide in, and then serves as her hero when she's in peril. It's not really some crazy character arc, but it's good enough for a Sly Cooper game if you ask me. And now, we have an assembled team full of world-class thieves ready to take on the Cooper Vault job. And with Murray's guilt and Bentley's jealousy resolved, we're free to turn our attention to Sly as he attempts to grow himself. With that, we return to the present moment. Sly is being crushed to death by Dr. M's creature. He first reflects on the crew he's assembled, noting that the talent will probably go to a waste, and that's a real shame. But then he turns his thoughts towards Carmelita as the reality of the situation sets in. This is the end for him. He laments his behavior towards her, always being the flirt, but never being man enough to see his feelings through, to see if the two of them could have found love. He mentions that Bentley's relationship has inspired him, giving more narrative and character weight to the Turtles' bravery in episode 5. It's a cool touch and inspires Sly's actions at the end of this game. I just wish Kevin Miller's performance was a bit more inspired, a sentiment I continue to feel about the entire game. It seems like the rest of the cast really stepped up and gave it their all for this finale, but Miller comes off as bored or uninterested, which is a shame after he did so good in Sly 2. Much like the Cold Heart of Hate in Sly 1, Sly 3's final chapter is told in sequential order, breaking away from the traditional job structure established in Sly 2. You aren't free to pick what jobs you want to do at what time. No, they play out in a set order. It helps them tell the story they wanted to here on Dr. M's island, but if I'm honest, the first 4 missions don't do much for me at all outside of showing off more of Dr. M and his vicious personality, while also hinting at his backstory. Oh, and then there's this.
How about a kiss from Monsieur Magnificento? My lips are warm like bread from the oven.
Yeah, it's pretty good too. Anyway, I want to skip past these earlier missions. They feel like arbitrary but necessary inclusions, giving the new team members one last chance to pull their weight. Except for the Panda King, of course. I mean, he helps in a few cutscenes, but I can't imagine why he didn't get his own gameplay segment. Maybe they ran out of time or ideas, but it makes his addition to the team feel super weak. Anyway, let's jump to the good bits. While all the previous jobs in this episode have an action flair, it's felt most when Sly takes to the skies. What can I say? I love the plane, so getting one last go of it here is great. It's a tough section too, with these bat enemies that can easily collide into you, and the whale fly makes for a fun encounter as well. But the real meat of this section comes from Sly's interaction with Dr. M. It's here where we learn that he was the Bentley of the previous Cooper gang, featuring Sly's father and McSweeney. Dr. M is a bitter man upon years of reflecting on his time in the gang, believing himself to be the true leader, but always playing second fiddle. He believes he spent too much time in the shadow, and over years of compounding thoughts, he fights for the treasure in the Cooper Vault, believing himself to be the true heir to the fortune. The monkey even draws parallels between himself and Bentley, which is touched on again later when the two meet. What's awesome is that before they even meet, Bentley begins questioning if Murray and himself are sidekicks or equals to Sly. Perhaps some of that jealousy established earlier still remains in the back of his mind. They set it up earlier in a completely different arc, but now it's being brought back here in a new light. What can I say though? I love this scene.
Then lock horns with me. Think you'll find I'm a better match.
I have no fight with you, Bentley. You and I are the same.
I gather you were the technical specialist working with Sly's father?
You knew Sly's dad?
Quiet, caveman. The adults are talking. That's right, Bentley. I know the pain you suffer working under your inferior.
It's no secret I'm smarter than the other guys. But there's more to it than that.
Like what?
Like brotherhood.
I know I'm jumping ahead, but it is so awesome. Seeing Bentley resist the urge to follow in Dr. M's footsteps and instead stick by his friends is a great moment. These lines always stand out to me. And as I've said before, Bentley's my favorite character in this series. Think about how much he grows from the first game through this one. It's awesome. Before that though is the trek through the Cooper Vault itself, and this is another special level. Up until this point, Sly's ancestry has always been important, but never explored directly. Now, instead of being told about the history, we get a chance to live it alongside of some awesome gameplay sequences that get back to the series' roots. Sly and his jump and hit the circle button moves. It's a fantastic job that handles the Cooper lore far better than Thieves in Time ever dreamt of. It's a special moment of this game. And then of course there's the fight with Dr. M himself. I'm pretty sure I said this in the longer video too, but I truly believe that this is the best boss fight in the entire series. It's well balanced, it has the weight of an entire story leading up to it, it's challenging with its multiple phases, and it ends with such strong character moments. The exchange between Sly and Dr. M is memorable, short but poignant, that whatever happened with his father is not a reflection of who Sly is. Every Cooper is their own individual who can't just bathe in the family's past accomplishments, but instead must create their own legacy. Sly is only partially defined by his ancestry, but most of who he is comes from his own actions and decisions. Hell, Dr. M even concedes that Sly is right, even if he doesn't want to admit it. And then Carmelita enters and Sly sacrifices himself to protect her, literally taking the bullet. In a put up or shut up moment, he delivers on the thoughts he had earlier, to no longer be a coward towards her and to try to find a way to make it work. Having Carmelita finish the fight is poetic, and Sly's faking of amnesia finally allows them to come together as a couple. Of course, basing this relationship on a lie for the sake of love is as misguided as it is noble. In other words, it could have consequences, a premise I wish Thieves of Time had handled better. Still, when this game was meant to be the happy ever after ending for all the characters, it works. Sly choosing connection with the woman he loves over his past, making the incredibly hard decision to abandon his ancestors and his friends to build that relationship. But true friends want you to be happy, even if it means moving on from your current lifestyle. Inevitably, the good times with the boys always come to an end someday, as members get married, move away, have children, and more. Life pulls us in all directions, making those fleeting moments of reunion with old friends more special as a result, since they aren't on a weekly basis anymore. And there's beauty in that. It's another parallel to real life that these games have allowed me to reflect on as I get older, and I'm always thankful for that. And I think that's the sentiment I want to end this section on. Again, if you want more detailed thoughts on the jobs, or the themes, or the characters, then check out my other Sly-tly video. I know this one has been very scatterbrained, but I don't want to repeat myself ad nauseum. This is just another look at the game. With that, we reach the end of the game's story, but there's still a trophy list to check off and a bunch of challenges to finish. I'm going to start with those challenges because there's a ton of them, and you have to finish them all if you want to get the Platinum Trophy. To be honest, these are not that challenging, especially for me at this point in my life. They were tougher when I was a kid, but that's mostly due to some of them being downright unfair. Like the challenge where you can only destroy the tri-winged planes. The other ones will sometimes crash into you, and it counts as you killing them, forcing a restart. Once again, the rewind feature came in clutch for mitigating this nonsense. Of course, I also used it to cheat a few times too, undoing mistakes in the challenges that reduce your health or ask you to beat a timer. All in all, I think the inclusion of these challenges are good. Sly 2 had 8 episodes, and this one only has 6, and the challenge mode helps offset that feeling that you're getting less game here. Most of the jobs are great too, so being able to replay any of them at any time is also appreciated, and the 2-player mode is available for some extra fun. Just like in the previous 2 emulation releases, Sly-tly on PS5 has a brand new trophy list, and I love that. Many of them relate to finishing episodes or doing all the challenges, but there are a few odds and ends. Rewind once again proves its usefulness here, as many of the extra trophies relate to things like avoiding damage during certain missions, which is a cinch when you can offset any mistake as soon as they happen. And then there's the miscellaneous things like positioning characters in certain spots on the map, or defeating guards in multiple ways, and of course viewing the gallery in all 6 episodes. I knocked out some of these during the main playthrough and cleaned up the rest in about 20 minutes. Well, except for Dread Pirate. Ugh. You need 90 points to reach the rank of Dread Pirate, and you get 1 point for sinking a ship, and 2 points for taking out the captain after boarding it. Thus, the fastest way to complete this challenge is to board every final ship in every encounter, something that I hadn't really been doing up until this point. With that knowledge, I set out to grind. It took me about 75 minutes to get the points I needed, which was shorter than I expected, to be honest. But I can't say I had fun doing it. The tedium I already talked about earlier cropped up, but 2 other factors made it worse. Losing health meant losing cannons, which slowed down the process, and the fact that the dog pirates could block my attacks was annoying at first too. But then I realized they are weak to charge moves and you can just beat them that way. Look, I really tried to enjoy the pirate ship, I really did, but it's not for me. But you know what? At least I got the platinum trophy out of it, and saving it for last ensured that that happened then, so it kind of made the grind worth it. If you're gonna do it, I'd say throw on a podcast or something, and you'll be alright. Overall though, I'm still pleased they included this revamped trophy list for all the re-releases. It gives players something new to do in a game that they've probably already completed dozens of times. In my last video on Sly-tly, I concluded by saying that while I still didn't enjoy it as much as Sly 2, because the new gameplay additions felt like subtractions, I managed to find a new appreciation for that game. And now, all these years later, I'd say that appreciation has blossomed into full-out respect, because I'm now more willing to accept this game for what it is, something different than Sly 2. It's not a retread of Band of Thieves, and that's a good thing. It shifts the focus towards the characters and finds ways to tie in all of them, heroes and villains, into the theme of legacy. They all fall into it in sometimes subtle and sometimes overt ways. It's in recognizing these arcs that you truly come to appreciate Sly-tly for its character-inspired approach to narrative. At the same time, one big difference between this video and my look at the Sly 2 emulation is that I found myself more compelled to talk about every job here. There were only a handful I felt like skipping over, and that's because Sly-tly finds ways to incorporate different characters into a single job far more often than Sly 2, which keeps the pacing feeling fresh and allows the action to take center stage. Stealth and platforming still play a role, but this game isn't afraid to get loud and wild with its gameplay scenarios, and I can admire that change in perspective. I'll still always prefer Sly 2 over this, in part because it was my first experience with the series, but I've reached the point where I can genuinely see how people would prefer this over the other games. It sort of comes down to what you want from a Sly Cooper experience, and this one offers up something different. Hell, all the games do, and I think that's a strength of the series. Infinite opportunities to compare, but everyone can feel justified in calling any one game their favorite Sly Cooper game. Except Thieves in Time. Thanks for watching. Alright everyone, I hope you enjoyed this look at Sly-tly Honor Among Thieves. I know it was super scatterbrained. As I did this recording, it felt like it was even more scatterbrained than the Sly 2 emulation that I made a couple months ago, but hopefully you got something out of it. Again, this is not meant to be a replacement for my longer video, it's just more of an appreciation for this game and how it wrapped up the original trilogy, while also just sharing some random thoughts as they came to me. If you're wondering what comes next for Sly Cooper content here on the channel, I have 2 ideas. I already mentioned the 3,000 subscriber special, where I rank all the game's jobs from worst to best. That would be a massive undertaking, and a long video in of itself, so if you want to see that, please subscribe. I really look forward to making that video and organizing it a lot better than I have these last 2 videos on Sly, but yeah, so subscribe if you want to see that. I also noticed that if I upgrade my PlayStation Plus subscription, I could play Bentley's Hack Pack, which, believe it or not, I have never touched, so maybe a video on that would be fun too. For now, I just appreciate you joining me on this journey, especially if you spent hours and hours watching all my Sly content. I know many have, and I'm really grateful for you. And that's it for this one. If you want to support me further, consider becoming a channel member, leaving a super thanks, or donating on Buy Me a Coffee. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing for more, follow me on Twitter at NopNapNarp, and as always, have a nice day, and take care.